And now it's 30 minutes to 6 o'clock. High time we brought you today's confession. If yours is read out, you get a smart speaker. Confessions at greatesthitsradio.co.uk. Today's comes from Lucius. Hello, Lucius.
Lucius.
Simon and Ali Collective, I must seek forgiveness as this secret has weighed heavily on my conscience for many a year. Let me take you back to 1986, the year that I was at the legal age that I could indulge in a little bit of alcohol every now and again. And there's an awful lot of alcohol in a lot of these confessions. By the way, having read most of them over the weekend, I would say, here's my tip for writing a perfect confession, to add to the other ones about keep it legal and avoid laxatives. You don't have to write your entire memoir when you send it in. Okay? Just saying. Anyway, Lucia says, I was a member of a very well-known, much-loved family of drinkers.
Right, much loved.
Really? And I would regularly partake in the odd pint or three at our regular watering hole, the Prince of Wales. And the night in question was no different. Myself and my father got there about 8:45 in the evening to meet the usual suspects. These included One-Eyed Bart, the local window cleaner. His nickname will become apparent, the reason for it will become apparent later. We all took up our regular places at the end of the bar, and the night was going swimmingly. One-Eyed Bart had this nickname, as in his youth he had unfortunately had an accident where he lost his right eye and had it replaced by a slightly wonky glass one. He used to take it out, not only to gross people out, but also to drop it into his pint when he went to the toilet to stop anyone nicking his drink. Well, you would, wouldn't you?
No, you would. Absolutely.
So true to form, this is exactly what he did at this moment in time, and he goes off to the loo. What I did then is I seized my chance and I stuck my hand in his pint, plucked out his glass eye, and swapped his glass for an empty one from the end of the bar whilst no one was looking. Just then I saw him come back from the loo, and I quickly turned my back towards the bar and pretended to have a conversation with someone. Bart stood in front of the bar, looking quizzical, looking up and down, and then he said, "Where's my pint then?" Me trying my hardest to keep a straight face, I said, "Well, a bloke did come in, he stood behind me, had one drink and left. He must have drunk yours as well." "But it had my eye in it," he said. "He's swallowed my eye." A line I don't think I've had.
No.
"What rotten luck," I said. He then proceeded to tell everyone in the bar that someone had stolen and then drunk his glass eye. Well, at that point, all hell broke loose, and I was then suddenly surrounded by a lynch mob asking what this mystery assailant looked like. Well, I quickly made up the most vague description of a human being you've ever. He was got a medium height, medium build, jeans, hair. But to be honest, they were also drunk. I could have described Barney the dinosaur, and they would still have gone out looking for him. Well, at this point, it had gone from a simple joke to a full-scale manhunt, and I was in too deep, so I had to make my escape. So in a loud voice I said, "I'll go and check the car park," and I quickly made my way to the exit. Once I was outside, my conscience got the better of me, and I did what any honest person would do in this situation, and I hid in the outside toilet.
Of course.
But whilst I was there, I realised I had a plan. I quickly pulled my shirt out of my jeans, undid a couple of shirt buttons, ruffled up my hair, slapped my cheek a number of times to make it go red. Don't try any of this at home, by the way, kids.
No.
I then grabbed the eye out of my pocket, still gross, I know, and crashed through the bar door with the eye held aloft and shouted, "Look, I've got it," at the top of my voice. I was quickly surrounded by the entire bar, all asking where I found it. I said, I told an action-packed tale of how I chased the thief and gave him a jolly good scene too. I told him to be on his way and to never darken this door again. I was acting like a rozzer, that's what I said. Well, the residents lapped it up so much, and they gave out a great huzzah, and for the rest of the night lavished me with much praise and as many free drinks as my liver could take. And still to this day, the story of One-Eyed Bart and his missing glass eye is told like an urban legend and passed down from father to son. However, says Lucius, at this point I throw myself at the mercy of the court, beg for forgiveness, not just for making everyone think I was a hero, or the countless number of free drinks I was given for many weeks after the event, but mainly to my Uncle Bart, One-Eyed Bart, who took it to his grave, thinking that I had saved his precious, slightly wonky and total gross glass eye. Many thanks in advance, says Lucius. So the thing is, he never thought it was the good thing to do to say to One-Eyed Bart, whilst One-Eyed Bart was still with us. But with the motivation of a smart speaker.
Yes, now.
Now you tell the story, Lucius.
The tables have turned.
Exactly. The tale of a swallowed glass eye, although not, as it turned out to be, Sister Susie, the voice of moral responsibility.
Well, Lucius, you just don't mess with people's pints on the bar. It causes lots of issues.
Oh, you know about this.
Susie's from the pub, remember?
Yeah.
It does. You know, I've had many an argy-bargy. If you've drunk my pint, or whose is this one? No. And also, why would you leave your eye in a pint? Just that in itself, I kind of want to forgive you.
Have you ever had someone say you swallowed my eye?
No. I have not. But do you know what? It's terrible behaviour.
So not forgiven.
Not forgiven.
Okay, Brother Matthew, who doesn't speak for the name.
Obviously, I'm going to forgive, but I have to. If I had the one glass, I think I might be tempted to put it in the pint just to stop anyone drinking my pint, because you wouldn't. No one's going to drink my pint if there's an eye at the bottom of my pint.
But why would you drink it?
Well, I then take the eye out. That's how it works. You see, I then take the eye out, and it's been in the alcohol. So I think
sterile.
My medical
Sterile.
exactly.
It's all safe.
Medical background tells me that that's all fine. And you know, be able to keep an eye out for my pint. Boom! And that's why I'm going to forgive. Yes.
All right, says the people's verdict. Do you forgive Lucius, yes or no? On the text 61054, you start your message with Simon. Confession then came from Lucius, the glass eye story. You remember Lucius, the member of the very well-known much-loved family of drinkers.
Much loved.
Much loved. Yes, exactly right. Anyway, here comes the people's verdict.
So Darren on Canvey Island says, I've not laughed as much for ages. Absolutely forgiven. Felix says, forgiven. Funny how often this can happen. I've got the feeling that Felix texts that in after every confession. But anyway, Steve in Plymouth says, I forgive, as I used to put my false teeth in my pint to stop people trying to pinch my drink.
Is that a thing? Wow.
Apparently it's a thing. And Jerry says, forgiven. He was only keeping an eye on his pint.
I'm sure we've had a confession in the past with, you know, as people, like there were false limb confessions.
Yes.
So there may well be some more of those, as long as they're tasteful and suitable for family listening. If you have something for us, you could get a smart speaker. Confessions at greatesthitsradio.co.uk. Thank you very much indeed for the people's verdict. Right, indeed, even though you're trying to read a confession. So here we go. Tonight's confession, which I was kind of timing for half time. Is that about?
Not quite. We've got about 30 seconds.
Nothing's going to happen in those 30 seconds. So if you have a confession, you send it to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. And if we use yours, you get a smart speaker. Deborah and Lizzie send in tonight's confession. They are sisters. Okay? That's Deborah and Lizzie. Father Simon and all.
Oh, hi.
It's a little bit dismissive.
Hi, Deborah. Yeah.
My sister and I are asking your forgiveness. I think Debbie is the lead on this. Asking your forgiveness for an incident which happened on the sunny Greek island of Kos. It involves an incident whilst holidaying there with my husband, my sister and brother-in-law in the summer of 1999. Instead of having a meal in the hotel again, we decided to head down to the local tavernas that run parallel to the beach, just a few minutes walk away. After a lot of wining and dining, especially the whining, we bid our farewell to the very attentive staff, thanking them for a truly memorable evening. Intending to proceed back to the hotel for a little nightcap, a spot merrier than we were when we left, just to say the least. On the cusp of too much alcohol consumption in this story. My husband looked across at the sea and said, anyone fancy a skinny dip?
Oh,
now, this is always an unwise thing,
No.
okay?
No.
Particularly in a confession. Anyway, this is what husband has said. With the moon shining down on the sparkling water, it did look very inviting. But having spent quite a while trying to look this good for hours before, my sister and I declined, say Deborah and Lizzie. We said we wouldn't. Thanks very much. My brother-in-law says, well, it'd be rude not to. So next thing, they were stripping off and diving in. We watched on laughing, saying, what fools, men, losers.
Yep.
Why are they doing that? We decided to stroll back to our hotel and leave them to it, shouting, we'll see you back at the hotel bar. They gave thumbs up and carried on with their nudie swim. We looked momentarily down at their clothes, which were strewn over the beach. My sister said, shall we?
Oh, yeah.
My reply was, I think so. We started picking up the clothes, the wallets, the sunglasses, giggling as we did so. There was a big stack of sunbeds piled up ready for the next day. We hid behind them for a few minutes to see if they'd noticed. But no, they were oblivious. They were just boys having fun skinny dipping. What could possibly go wrong? Meanwhile, back at the hotel bar, sipping our cocktails, about an hour later, I said to my sister, "It's been quite a while, hasn't it? I'm beginning to worry. I'm thinking about going back to the beach." Just then, all of a sudden, 2 drippy figures appeared in the doorway of the cocktail lounge, wrapped only in tablecloths, looking like low-rent Julius Caesars.
Oh dear.
However, I should say Julius Caesar without their loincloths.
Oh.
Whatever the Latin is for loincloth, they didn't have them. We burst out laughing, 1 with relief and 2, how hilarious they looked. Then, having to keep the prank going, asked why they were dressed in tablecloths, which actually, now we looked, were very much like the ones we'd just eaten our dinner off in the taverna. I think that's my moussaka stain right there.
Oh no.
Someone's nicked our clothes and stuff while we were swimming, said my husband. I say, "Oh no, that's a bit low," trying to keep a straight face. "How annoying for you. Maybe it was a dog." My husband says, "Of course it wasn't a dog, you stupid woman. It must have been kids. It's always kids. They're up to no good, being kids and everything." My sister says, "Where did you get the tablecloths from?" So my brother-in-law says, "Well, after wondering what to do, we wrapped ourselves in sun loungers." And we shuffled along, wrapped in a sun lounger.
Yeah, that works.
Then we ran over to the taverna, like little mini tanks, where we'd been eating. Luckily, they were just locking up, and they had a good laugh about it. And then we asked if they had any towels that we could borrow, and they said, "Only tea towels, sir."
Oh, wow.
Would that be enough?
Yes.
How rude. How rude. We thought they were. How insulting. Anyway, they let us have these tablecloths, pre-stained, as you can see.
Okay.
Anyway, so we laughed, and then we laughed a little bit more. We played along, and then, before we could do anything, they cancelled all their cards. And the whole prank had escalated somewhat. Okay. Now, you see, my sister and I are therefore asking for your forgiveness, Father Simon, and the other lot. After all these years, guys, it was us. It wasn't the kids from Kos, which sounds like an 80s TV musical sequel.
Yeah.
It wasn't the kids from Kos. It was Deborah and Lizzie, sisters. Sorry about the embarrassment, the tablecloths and the tea towels. I'd forgotten how funny this was until I started writing it again. Says Deborah and Lizzie, the authors of tonight's confession, more nudity in Kos. Don't you just love it when the Brits go abroad? Anyway, always run a mile if someone says, "Should we just do as this?"
No,
Yeah, no.
I don't think I will, actually.
Sister Susie producing from the pub.
Well, unless you've got someone to look after. So if you've got someone on watch on the beach, then maybe you could go for a skinny dip. But leaving your clothes on the beach? No chance. Now, I've got 2 issues with this story. One, how could you blame it on a dog? Like, what mouth has that dog got to be able to pick all of it up? Has he got a little
It's a
bag
big
on
mouth.
his back?
Yes. That's what I
And then
say.
2,
Yeah.
how do you wrap yourself in a sun lounger?
I suppose
don't.
you fold it around you.
Yeah, maybe. Or do you carry 2 and walk sideways? I don't know.
It's not a great look anyway, is
It's a
it?
great look. But, just for the giggles, I'm going to forgive you, Debbie and Lizzie, because I think that was very fun.
Brother Matthew.
Yes, skinny dipping always a little too fabulous for me. Thanks very much. I love the fact that there's no remorse at all in this. I didn't realise how funny it was until I started writing it again. Brilliant. Always see it through to the bitter end, and if possible, always blame it on a naughty dog. That's always my philosophy in life. So yes, definitely forgiven.
Excellent. Thank you very much indeed. So is the people's verdict. Just tear yourselves away. Just got a couple of moments. People's verdict, nicely timed, 61054. Start your message with Simon. The people's verdict is in on tonight's confession, which came from Deborah and Lizzie, and a tale about how they stole their husband's clothes when they'd gone for a skinny dip. And the people's verdict sounds like this.
Yes, Jerry from Weston-super-Mare says, forgiven, skinny dipping on holiday never ends well. Roy is one of many to point out, forgiven, but should have stopped it before the card got cancelled. Alex from Cambridgeshire, not forgiven. It would have been fine if they'd owned up, but what do they mean before we could do anything they'd cancel their cards? You don't just cancel a card on a whim. It's a fairly complex process. They would have had plenty of time to stop them, and they should have done so. Sean says, I want to claim triple points for putting drive time time first. Jog on, losers. And Emma in Tangmere says, totally forgiven, brilliant confession. Makes me long to visit Greece and eat at that very generous taverna. Amazing that they tried to blame a dog. No way, we all know. No howl, no foul.
Very good, very good. Your confession, please. Confessions at greatesthitsradio.co.uk. Okay. Today's confession comes from Lucy, Rock and Roll High School. Okay, here we go. Lucy says, Father Simon, Brother Matthew, Sister Susie from the pub. I'm writing to confess a heinous event took place whilst I was in my third year of my Bachelor of Education degree at university. It's January 1996. I was about to embark on my third teaching practice, spending a term in the classroom, putting all of the skills that I'd learnt over the last couple of years into practice. The day came when we were told which school that we'd be in and the time that the minibus from the university would leave in order to take us to our placement. To my horror, I saw that I'd been placed in a school that was a considerable distance away and that my minibus would be leaving at 6:15 in the morning to undertake the 90-minute drive to school. I would be the first and last stop, so I would be in school about 7:45 every day, leaving at 4:15, getting home by 6. I lived with 4 other students, also student teachers, and we were all in different schools. Every one of the others considerably closer than mine. One of my housemates, Jenny, was in a school that was 10-minute walk away from the house. Needless to say, we compared notes and speculated about our placements. My first day dawned. I arrived at school still in the dark and the snow, reported to the head teacher's office. He welcomed me and assigned my class. I had year 3, 7 and 8-year-olds. I was also told that my teacher was on maternity leave and that I would be supervised by a supply teacher who had started last week. Not a great start. However, instead of taking me to my classroom, the head grabbed his keys and told me to follow him to the minibus. He drove me around the estate, pointing out the houses in which each of the children in my class lived, whilst regaling us with various misdemeanours that members of their families had been jailed for.
Right. Okay.
Wow.
It turned out that we were going to be teaching the next generation of the Welsh branch of the Cray family.
Oh, lovely.
I spent the rest of the day trying to match faces to names on the register, whilst chaos continued around me as the pupils were, quite frankly, awful, and the supply teacher no clue how to control them. Of course, once I was at home, we all sat down to compare our schools and what we had learnt. As I was telling everyone about how it appeared I'd be teaching the future beneficiaries of Her Majesty's pleasure, Jenny interrupted and started talking about how she really didn't like the food at lunchtime.
Oh, dear.
And that she was thinking of taking her own avocado sandwiches in for lunch in future. How awful for her.
Okay.
The supply teacher and I considered it to be a successful day if we had the same amount of children at the end of the day as we'd started it. Jenny continued to moan about how Tarquin couldn't tie his shoelaces, even though she'd shown him at least 3 times. Anyway, in week 6 of this routine, I was at the other end of another day of school when there was a knock on the classroom door and the head popped his head round. He beckoned me with a finger and, confused, I left the room after telling the supply teacher I'd only be a couple of minutes and to stay strong. I walked into the head's office to see a police officer standing there. The head introduced me and the police officer started to explain that there'd been an incident of which I needed to be made aware. It turned out that the father of one of my pupils, Reg, had just it's not funny, had just committed an armed robbery.
Right.
And had been overheard shouting that he was going to pick up his kid and woe betide anyone who got in his way.
Right.
The police officer continued by saying that the armed response unit was on its way to protect Reg, but would be at least another 45 minutes, which took us to the end of the school day. Could I stay with Reggie until they arrived and make sure that no harm came to him and that he didn't leave the school? Of course, I jumped at the chance to protect a small child that had been making my life hell for the last 6 weeks, put myself in the way of a bullet if the father turned up before the armed police. Anyway, the next 45 minutes passed without incident. Reg was collected by a lovely female police officer and was taken away. Needless to say, I was still quite shaken when I got home. My housemates noticed that I appeared to be quieter than normal and asked what was wrong, so I told them the story. Jenny's response: "Oh, that's nothing. I've got my evaluation tomorrow. At least you haven't got that." Well, she said, I'll never be able to sleep tonight. So I left the room and went to bed. 5:30 a.m. the next morning rolls around, and as I was leaving, I noticed that Jenny had left her bag with all her beautifully prepared, handcrafted teaching aids in the hallway next to the radiator. Now, Father Simon, I should point out that we had a radiator in the hallway. It leaked terribly when it was turned on. So basically, we had the choice of freezing to death or drowning in the hallway, and we collectively opted for the former, as if we left the radiator on overnight, the bucket overflowed and made a mess. And a wicked idea occurred. What would happen if I moved the bag slightly and turned the radiator on? So I tried it, and yes, the radiator indeed started to drip inside her bag, all over the flashcards and handouts that she had beautifully prepared for the evaluation. I skipped out of the house, safe in the knowledge that it would be at least another 90 minutes before anyone else stirred. My day passed without incident, no guns, no nothing, and I arrived home.
Oh, good.
I could hear the tears and shouting from outside and the protestations from one of the other housemates that she had definitely turned the radiator off. It turns out that the radiator could do quite a lot of damage in 90 minutes, and the whole bag had been completely soaked through. Needless to say, Jenny's evaluation hadn't gone well. For the first time in 6 weeks, Simon, I spent the rest of that evening with a smile on my face. Father Simon, I am not seeking forgiveness from Jenny, as she deserved it. I'm seeking forgiveness from my other housemate, Roz, who took the brunt of the blame for my act. I decided that year that teaching was not for me. I still scan the FBI's most wanted page on a regular basis to see if any of the class of 96 had reached the pinnacle of their career ambition, and I tune into Crime Watch every now and again just to reminisce about my student days. Well, it's tonight's confession, which comes from Lucy, who's decided that teaching is not for her, but a torrid tale involving an armed robbery. Sister Susie from the pub, what do you say?
Well, I have to say, I don't think Jenny was particularly sympathetic or nice to Lucy, so I'll give her that. And if all she had to do was manage to teach Darkwing to tie his shoelaces, and she still whinged about that,
She did.
Lucy should be lucky that it wasn't Jenny that ended up in that school, because that would have been terrible. However, I do think you should have admitted it, because it's not very fair on Roz, really. I was just about to forgive you until the very end, and I can't, because it was mean on your other housemate. You let her take the blame. You did admit. Sorry.
Not forgiven. Okay, Brother Matthew.
I mean, that story really took a direction that I don't think any of us were anticipating at all. I'm obviously going to forgive, because it's a perfect crime. It's a perfect crime. She got away with it. Roz got the flack. Brilliant. And it was the radiator. Don't put your stuff next to the radiator, Jenny. There's the lesson, Mrs. Teacher. So, yeah, definitely forgiven. And with your avocados and your Tarquins and your whatever else. I mean, it's absolutely tailor-made for me to forgive, I would have thought.
It's the line, it turned out that the father of one of my pupils, Reg, had just committed an armed robbery that made me think, well, I think this is an unusual confession.
Yes, it is.
And worthy of your attention. But it's the people's verdict, of course, as ever, that we need. Do you forgive ex-teacher Lucy, or never quite made teacher Lucy? On the text, please, 61054. You'll start your message with Simon. Is Lucy forgiven or not? On the text, 61054. First word is Simon. The verdict will be on the way. 5 minutes past 6, and just before 6 o'clock we were hearing Lucy's confession. She was thinking she was going to be a teacher, and then she got given a bit of a tough school, you could say, and decided to take it all out on Jenny and leaked the radiator into her work bag, ruining all her evaluation work. The people's verdict is in. Sounds like this.
Yes, just about everyone is forgiving. Dave Smith in Higham in Kent says, what an absolute legend. Rich and Sue in Kent say, we think most certainly Lucy should be forgiven. She is hilarious and should take up a new career as a writer. Patricia in Mexborough, I forgive Lucy. Got to admit, I'd have done something to Jenny myself. She sounds very self-centred. Caroline Sherwood in Basingstoke, total forgiveness. I was actually hoping that Lucy's flaming avocado sandwiches were in that handbag and got soaked too. Think Roz deserves an extremely belated apology, though. I said just about everyone. Brian in Romford says, jealous, sly, devious, sneaky, lying and gloating specimen would have been a shallow and poor example to any age group. Education's gain that she left.
Okay, so that's very good. So on balance, you're forgiven, Lucy. Thank you very much. You get a smart speaker as well. If you have a confession, it's confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. So the last confessions we'd done, we had a policeman jumping out of a shop doorway and scaring who he thought was his mate, turned out to be poor worker for British Rail. Today's teacher confession, we had the summer holiday confession involving skinny dipping and dressing in a sun lounger.
Yes.
Very strange. And the glass eye in the beer.
Yes, wow, that was a
confession.
Classic.
Maybe that has inspired a confession in you, and maybe you could just spend some time in front of your laptop. Just send us that tale. If we use it, you get the smart speaker. On the email then, confessions@greatesthitsradio.com. But tonight's confession comes from Freddie. Thank you, Freddie, for tonight's tale. We'd love to hear from you. Confessions at greatesthitsradio.co.uk. Let me see what we have here. Freddie says, Dear Father Simon and the Confessional Collective, the event surrounding my confession happened when I was asked to fill my dad's car full of petrol at a garage. I mean, nothing strange about that.
Oh, dear.
Something Dad has been asking their kids to do for decades. So the usual negotiation goes like this. I say, I will, for one of those big Cadbury's chocolate bars. He says, deal. I say, and 20 Rothmans and a box of matches. He says, no. Smoking very bad.
Yeah.
Never ever do that. And anyway, he says, it's payback for the endless years of school runs, sports clubs, and drama clubs. Before Matt gets annoyed, I don't like the theatre really.
Good.
Says Freddie. The theatres need all the help that they can
Obviously,
get.
they are.
Yeah.
Anyway, this was match day at our nearest football team, who happened to be the world-famous and loved by some Manchester United.
Okay.
And we are only a couple of miles away from the ground. Now, this was before sat-nav and before mobile phones, so drivers had to use a map book or an A to Z. They actually had to work it out for themselves. Imagine that, kids.
Yeah.
Not being told to turn left at the next roundabout. You have to work it out before you leave. So this Saturday afternoon, United are playing at home. Some southern team of losers and jesses, I think. And my dad says, go and fill the car with fuel. Great timing, Dad, I'm thinking. It's match day. So I remonstrate with him for a bit. And I tell him I won't be able to repark, obviously, when I come back, because the road is used for match day parking and always fills up with United supporting gentlemen and ladies in their large cars. So I drive the car to the petrol station to fill the car with the fuel. That's the third time I think he's mentioned that. Eventually, he's actually done that.
Good.
He's actually
gone
finally
now.
bought the fuel.
Brilliant.
It's in the car.
Great news.
I then noticed a coach pull up and a very distressed driver get out. After the blue air had finally cleared, the driver asked me the following. Hey, mate, he says. He's a Londoner, fortunately. I'm lost and the passengers are getting tricksy. United fans from London, you know. Do you know a quick way to the match? Well, I thought for a second and I said, yes, I do. He says, do you live around here? And I said, yes, just round the corner. So I took a look at the bus and it was filled with fans, a singing and a shouting. So I said, what you do is you take this route and you'll have no problems getting to the match. You'll miss all of the traffic. I gave him detailed instructions, even jotted them down on a piece of paper. The driver was well pleased. Here you are. Thanks for your trouble, Gov, he says, because as I mentioned before,
Yes, he's from London.
he's from down south.
Yeah.
He just touched his peak cap and he was off. He handed me a couple of quid. Anyway, he filled his coach with petrol and off he went. Car full of petrol, as I think.
I believe, we might have touched on that. Yeah.
Freddie might have mentioned. I paid and headed home. Amazingly, I did manage to park outside my house, even though it was rapidly filling up with United supporters' cars. The parking gods had smiled upon me and were laughing as hard as I was. That is because, I have to tell you now, I had given the driver instructions to Main Road,
Oh, dear.
which is Manchester City's ground,
you see.
and not Old Trafford, the home of Manchester United. I've always wondered what happened. What became of the already furious coach driver, now £2 lighter, and what the outcome was, what his passengers said, and whether he got a tip at the end of the day. So if you were the driver of a coach and you refilled at the petrol station on Wilbraham Road in Chiltern-cum-Hardy, I was the person who gave you the wrong instructions. I hope the United fans weren't too heavy on you. I seek forgiveness from the coach driver and hope he didn't get too much stick from the United fans that he was taking to what he thought was Manchester United's ground. There is a moral to this story, says Freddie, and the moral is this. Never ask a Manchester City fan where
you
Manchester United's ground is.
Yeah.
That's the thing. That's what you have to remember. And that's where, and I mean, obviously, poor coach driver wasn't to know, because all we know is that Freddie was at the petrol station.
Was he filling his car,
filling
though?
his
That's
car
what I
up
want to know.
and getting a bar of chocolate, but
Yeah.
no facts.
No.
Sister Susie, the voice of responsibility and moral authority from the pub.
Freddie, do you know what? My dad would never forgive me if I forgave you, because he is a Man United supporter, and even though I don't really care about football, he would not speak to me, because think of all those people who went to see the match. Did they even make it? Had they wasted all their money? But the more stick I've got with Freddie is who goes out to fill the petrol on a special trip to fill the car with petrol?
I do that all the time.
There you go. Quite a lot of people.
Yeah.
Really?
Fill the car, yeah. Check the tyres, all of that.
You wait until the petrol is almost empty, and then when you're driving somewhere...
Nice little trip, Susie. Yeah.
What you do
You
is
get
you
the
wait,
petrol on the way.
you wait until it's match day, and then you say, "Are a chocolate, no fags." A lot of petrol 4 times.
So, I don't think you didn't need to make a special trip. You lost your parking space. You could have got when you were going out the next time. So, for that, me, Freddie, no.
No forgiveness for Freddie. Let's check in with Matthew then.
It would be far too easy to make some very weak joke about how all the Man United fans are coming from London, and I'm going to step away from that gag, because it'd be far too easy. Really, the driver should have known where he's going, shouldn't he? Should have known where you were going, sunshine. Looks like it's all on you because Freddie sent you to the wrong ground. Unlucky. So I am gonna forgive.
So you are going to forgive. Okay, all right. It's the people's verdict, though. That's what we're after. 61054. Start your message with Simon. Do you forgive Freddie? And merely moments ago, we had a confession from Freddie, who you might remember went to the petrol station filling up his dad's car. He went there 4 times in the space of a page. But essentially, he sent a coachload of Manchester United supporters to the wrong ground. That's basically what he did. He did it on purpose because he's a City fan. It's a classic confession revolving around football rivalry. Let's see how the people's verdict shapes out.
Yeah, and that's where the people's verdict goes. So basically, if you're a United fan, you're not forgiving.
Correct.
And if you're not a United fan, you're forgiving. Abso-flipping-lutely not forgiven. Man United fan here. I'd be livid, says Dennis. Paul in Leeds, though, says, if a full coach of so-called Manchester United supporters don't know where Old Trafford is, they should have been directed to Elland Road or Anfield. Heidi in Lincoln, totally forgiven. As a Blue, I've done this numerous times to the Reds, asking directions in Manchester, regularly sent them off to catch the bus to Main Road. I mean, home fans should know where their ground is.
Yes.
Totally agree with Matt. Forgiven, says Jerry in Weston-super-Mare. Wrong-footing lost Londoners is a regular pastime here in Somerset. Fenella says, tell Susie it's a man thing going out to make a special trip to get the petrol rather than fit it in when they're already out. My partner does it too, drives me mad. It's clearly because men have so much time in their hands. So thrilled to find you and Matt back where you should belong. Just love your show. And finally, Brian says, not forgiven. Why? Well, Susie, you're right about special trips to fill the car. Who has time for that? And anything to do with Man United fans having a bad day makes me smile ear to ear.
There you go. Thank you very much indeed for those. If you have a confession and you think we'd like it, apparently 2 laxative confessions have come in this week.
They're not getting on.